Do you ever catch yourself thinking, damn, why does my brain keep screwing me over? Maybe you're stuck in an anxiety spiral, or you can't kick that habit that you've been trying to ditch for years. Trust me, I've been there, and it's a special kind of hell. Well, here's a wild thought. What if everything we think we know about our brains is completely backwards? Stick with me here. So I've been on a meditation journey for over a decade now. Actually, oh my gosh, time flies. Over 2 decades now, like 23 years, thanks to my high school cross-country coach, Walter Gorski. I wonder where that guy is. Well, it didn't really click back then, and it didn't click for a long time. I was expecting to get to this place of emptiness, no thought, pure bliss. So when I failed at the impossible over and over and over, it was kind of hard to be motivated to come back to it. Well, I regularly half-assed it all the way until 2020. I was going through some major prenatal depression. I remember canceling interviews left and right, which I never do. Well, another interview was coming up in just a few minutes, and I remember wanting to cancel it so bad, but this little voice told me to keep it. Well, that interview was Ariel Garten. She's the founder of the Muse meditation headband. Well, she sent me one, and it was the first time that I could actually track my progress beyond just feeling like I was failing. And it basically showed me my brainwaves, so I could see if I was actually making progress or just sitting there like a potato. Well, I decided to go deeper, and I signed up for something that had been on my bucket list for a while. Transcendental Meditation. And holy crap, it was like someone hit the reset button on my life, or my meditation habit at least. Well, the days that I meditate, my aura ring shows noticeably lower stress levels. And now my heart is actually 12 years younger than my age. I don't know for sure if that's due to meditation because they just introduced the feature, but I'd like to say it has something to do with it. I don't want to say that meditation is aging me backwards, but what if it is? My point is, most people have the wrong expectations of meditation. And actually, meditation is kind of the antithesis of expectations. And transcendental meditation helps you get to that state. Non-judgment, non-attachment, no expectations, letting go, and sometimes even moments of bliss. So our guest today is Dr. Tony Nader. He's kind of one of the godfathers of TM and basically an expert in consciousness. I know. Consciousness doesn't mean a whole lot unless you're deep into spirituality. But what about tapping into infinite creativity or higher potential or more energy and just carrying bliss throughout your day? Well, this episode is going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about your mind. So 3 key things we will learn are how consciousness, not your brain, is the primary creator of your reality. The secret to meditation's deep rest and wakeful alertness, and how transcendental meditation can transform your brain functions, improve your physiological age, and even alter your DNA. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything. Work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out, but that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
We are a field of all possibilities, and all possibilities can be tapped into. We have it, it's all within us. We have a reservoir within us of infinite creativity and intelligence. And nature, life, offered this to us in so many real ways that we have actually to be able to hear, to listen. So those who have their eyes open, they will see. Those who have their ears open, they will hear. And they will know the infinite possibilities available in life. And then they can make it happen because that is what awareness is. That's what consciousness is. See more, see life in its true fullness. And life is a field of all possibilities. And we can always tap into the highest possibility if we can see it.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
I have been a fan of yours for a while, and I'm really excited about your newest book. I love topics that just take me a little bit deeper spiritually. It seems like a lot of people meet me right at the surface level, and so I'm really enjoying the content. What inspired this latest work?
It's my search, actually, lifetime search for what is reality, what is ultimate truth, where we're coming from, where we're going. You know, the kind of questions everyone, almost at one point in their lives, whether young or old, ask themselves. And, you know, oftentimes we let it go because there are no full answers, or we have some belief systems, some dogmatic beliefs, or some whatever we're coming from, and we accept that. And so as a scientist, I was looking for answers that make sense to explain mind, body, physicality of things, the physical universe, energy, as well as mind, consciousness, spirituality. And having worked in different scientific arenas, neuroscience, neurology, endocrinology, brain science, psychiatry, medicine, as I'm a medical doctor, and worked also with a great knower of consciousness, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and have been through different techniques of meditation and yoga, and experienced within myself something very profound from the level of consciousness. I came to some very, very interesting conclusions. To me, they are very interesting, that answer many big questions in life. And I thought I should share what I know so that it contributes to the common knowledge, to the philosophical knowledge, and to the scientific understanding. And this is how we all share what we know and what we experience, hoping to raise, of course, human understanding for a better life for everyone. And, you know, the technology also that is associated with it, Transcendental Meditation and its practice, really leads to tremendous benefits for everyone who practice it, and even for society in creating reduction in conflict and all of that. So I thought I should put this in a comprehensive thesis, in a sense, a comprehensive book, which has a theoretical part, but most importantly, also how one can improve one's life on a daily basis, how one can have more happiness, more fulfillment, live a well-lived, flourishing life, and like that experience that they are, or we are all together fulfilling the purpose of why we are here.
I feel like you're a little bit famous in the Transcendental Meditation world. I'm always getting emails with your name. How did you originally begin your journey into spirituality? How were you introduced to it?
I was looking for how to develop the full potential of life. And I thought at the beginning that through improving the physiology, which is important, and maybe some mental, psychological processes, one can develop one's full potential. And I realized that something can be done on a profound and really comprehensive way through transcending, through going beyond the surface values, through expanding one's consciousness, one's awareness. And that is something I never thought is something expandable. I thought either we are aware or we are not awake. Either we have consciousness or we don't have it. But of course, I realized that consciousness can be drowsy, can be clear, can be sharp, can be peaceful. And gradually, as I started to practice transcendental meditation, which is part of the things that I had tried, yoga, breathing exercises, kind of different concentration or contemplation techniques, and like that. And transcendental meditation was really very specifically leading to something much deeper, which is going beyond all the surface values. As you mentioned, the surface values, we can say that the mind or consciousness is like an ocean, and one can be taken by the waves because they are the active ones and they are on the surface. But it's also possible to dive deep within the ocean of consciousness and expand the ocean of consciousness and discover that we are much more than a wave. So we are a wave, and we have many friends who are waves. Everybody is some kind of a wave on that ocean. And so transcendental meditation gave me this deep understanding through direct experience, plus the knowledge that was accompanying it was fulfilling. And so I put all of this together as a comprehensive understanding about life and my experience and my conclusions.
The name of your book is Consciousness is All There Is. How did you come to this realization, and what does that exactly mean?
When we look for what is ultimate reality, and that's a big question. Of course, it may sound philosophical, but it has very important practical values. However, on the theoretical value, we ask ourselves, we have something very personal, very intimate. We feel love, we feel happiness, we feel joys, we feel also pain. We have expectations, we have hopes, we think of the future, we have a sense of self and a sense of identity and sense of meaning. We look for meaning in life, for why things happen to us, good, bad, and all that, freedom, determinism. All of these are values that are on a subjective level that we can say the spiritual side of us. The side where it's not just matter, it's not just physicality, it's not just the body, but it's also something more important. And when we think about it, we realize that actually it's the most important thing, because without consciousness, there is nothing that has any meaning. It doesn't matter to us if we are the most loved person, the most knowledgeable person, the wealthiest person. If we're not conscious of it, if we are in coma or if we are in anesthesia. And so consciousness is really very personal, very important, and quite primary, if not most important in our understanding of who we are in our life. So that component is different from what we call physical energy and matter. Which are, the concept that there is some physical energy that appears as elementary particles, then they become atoms and then molecules, and then in our case as humans, cells and tissues and organs, and then the nervous system. As if we are the product of some material energy. And then the question becomes, which is a big question for philosophers and for scientists equally nowadays, and has been asked for thousands of years, actually. What is the reality? Is it only physical, or is it also consciousness, or is it both of them, or is it only consciousness? So there are these three big categories about what reality is. It could be reality is both, but most scientists, most philosophers don't see that this works as a theory, because how would something non-physical talk to something physical? How something that is, beyond the physicality, beyond the matter, actually talk and interchange and exchange things with something that is physical and material or influences it. So most scientists and philosophers today, they think there is only either originally, initially, essentially matter, so physical energy, and then somehow consciousness emerges from that, or there is a possibility that there is something more profound that is actually spiritual, that is consciousness. And when we say spiritual, it doesn't mean religious. It means that is non-physical. That's all. It's consciousness is something non-physical. That's why we call it spiritual. But it's not in the sense of spiritism or belief systems or religious dogma or beliefs or anything. Just that it is not physical. It's not material. Like when you love, it's a spiritual experience. It's not a material experience. Loving is giving and sharing and exchanging. And so love fills the heart and fills the mind, gives joy and gives fulfillment. And yet it's not like gaining some money or gaining some, something material. So that level, which is consciousness, is our spiritual side. And it could be primary also. So when I studied all these theories about reality, I found that the understanding that consciousness is actually the essence, consciousness is primary, consciousness is the stuff of life, is something defendable, is something very strongly scientific and philosophically understandable, and can really lead to a strategy, or more, if you like, a paradigm of understanding the purpose of life, understanding and answering many questions, even in science, in philosophy, in psychology, in sociology, in behavior, in all of these levels that are much more complete. And so that's what I really addressed in my book. That is how consciousness, something that is non-material, non-physical, can appear and lead to something physical, something material, which is the big question in this debate between materiality and non-materiality. So I took the logic that consciousness is primary, and not only primary, but everything is actually an expression of consciousness, a manifestation of consciousness. Even what we call physical, what we call material, is an expression of consciousness. It's a hard topic it's a challenging topic, but I feel that there is to it a very convincing solution, which I present in the book.
So even things like rocks and trees, and I mean, rocks are non-living, at least with trees, we're like, that's living, has some level of consciousness, but our understanding of what consciousness is might just not fit into that total idea. Am I understanding correctly?
You highlighted this key point, and that is the definition of consciousness. Unfortunately, not necessarily unfortunately, whenever people talk about consciousness, they think of human-like consciousness. So if you say something is conscious, let's say the tree is conscious, people think, but the tree cannot think like us, doesn't have a sense of present, past, and future, is not having a sense of self, and therefore it's not conscious. You say, what about the cat? Well, the cat might have something, but it certainly doesn't use tools, doesn't create new tools, doesn't understand the laws of nature, and doesn't have a history, doesn't have feelings of any kind, and therefore it must be not conscious. So we have to redefine consciousness truly. How can we define consciousness in a more comprehensive way? We have to understand that consciousness is a field that is beyond time and space. And it is that field that actually ultimately manifests in all the different aspects of manifestation. And there is a logic of how this field actually becomes all that we see, all that we experience, all that we know. But let's leave this a little bit on the side for a moment. And what we're saying is consciousness as a field appears in so many different ways of manifestation, from a most meager level of consciousness to a very high level of consciousness. So consciousness is on a spectrum, on a range from very little consciousness to very high consciousness. So when we look at ourselves as human, we do have this experience also. For example, we experience during waking that we can be drowsy, we can be clear, we can be sharp, we can have broad comprehension, we can have peace, we can have harmony, we can have stress, we can be tunnel vision. All of these are different levels of consciousness, even during the waking state. Now, we can go to sleep state. In sleep state, we don't have consciousness like the waking state, but our body is still conscious. Our body reacts to noise. If there is noise, it will wake up. That means it was aware of the noise, even though on the actual, what we call waking consciousness level, we were not aware, but the body reacted to the noise. During dream, we have a fictitious kind of consciousness. We are not living reality as we know it during the waking state. And so during these different states of consciousness, we have different levels of awareness. And like this, we can say that there is subconscious. For example, when we're sitting on a chair, our attention is on, let's say, what we are talking about or some discussion that's happening. We're not aware of the pressure of the chair on our body, but we can direct our awareness and feel that, yes, I feel, my skin feels, my body feels it. So these inputs from the chair against our body is being recorded in the physiology, but we are not bringing it to our higher level of awareness. This is what we say subconscious level of experience. So what I'm trying to say is there are different layers of consciousness. And these layers of consciousness can go to the animal life, to the tree life, and even to inorganic or mineral aspects like a stone. Now, how can we say the stone has consciousness? In the spectrum of what we're calling consciousness, the fact that the stone responds or reacts to, let's say, gravity. You take the stone, you drop the stone, it falls because it is sensing gravity. This minimal level of sensing is also a phenomenon in consciousness. It is not that the stone says, oh, I'm aware of gravity, or I know that I am a stone, or what's going to happen to me when I fall? Am I going to break myself? What's going to happen? There is absolutely nothing like that. The stone just senses gravity. And what I'm saying is that this sensing is a phenomenon of consciousness but on a very meager, very limited level. So there is this range of consciousness from almost nothing, really nothing, to human-like consciousness. And human-like consciousness can also be on a higher level of broad comprehension, broad perspective, and all of those aspects of higher cognition, higher understanding, thinking in a broader way, and like that.
So if we grasp this new understanding of consciousness, that it's more of a spectrum than we may have been taught, what does this change for us? Like, what does this mean for us in our daily lives? How does it maybe change the basis of reality as we view it?
Well, one thing is that we can improve our consciousness, and that our consciousness, when it's limited, we have limited freedom, we have limited understanding. You know, think of the day when you wake up and you are tired, you haven't slept well, or you're afraid, or you're, wondering about something, you have insecurities or fears. You start seeing in a tunnel way, in a tunnel vision, in a narrow vision. Your consciousness is limited. You don't think of broad things, of long-term things, of the whole meaning of life. And when you wake up like that, tired and fatigued or stressed, you are not creative. If a problem happens, it becomes overwhelming. It becomes a big mountain. And you're not really handling your life in the best possible way. Whereas if you have just simply slept well, you're relaxed, you have a good night's sleep, you are peaceful inside, you are clear in your thinking, then you see that during the day you are more creative, you are more able to be happy, to enjoy things, and if a problem happens, you can easily overcome it. And so there is a difference in how we handle our life, how we live it, how we experience it, how we are happy with it, depending on our state of being, which is really our state of consciousness. And so there is a technology of consciousness that allows us to improve our awareness so that we can see in a broader way, we can take things and interact with things in a way that is more comprehensive, that takes more factors, more variables into consideration. And this is really just by broadening our awareness. It's like you have a container and you want to put in this container, let's say, water. Well, the amount of water you can put in the container depends on the size of the container. Small glass can take only so much water. A swimming pool will take more. A lake will take much more. An ocean will take a huge amount. And we have within ourselves that capacity, based on our level of consciousness, to either be able to see, experience, manage, and calculate, and react and interact from a small perspective, which means our consciousness is limited, or we can expand our consciousness and have more knowledge, more abilities, and more capacity to deal with things. And this doesn't have to be specific values like specific knowledge. It can be on an intuitive level. We develop our intuition when our consciousness expands. And this is how we can make better choices in our life and make the right choices rather than the wrong choices that lead us to problems and difficulties. So there is a very practical level in developing one's consciousness, one's awareness. And there is a practical technology to develop consciousness, which is, in this case, Transcendental Meditation, which takes us beyond the surface value of the waves of the ocean to know that we are the ocean, and this is how we expand our awareness.
One of the ideas that comes up for me that feels hopeful is it seems as though the traditional belief or the common belief is that our brains create consciousness. And this can be disempowering because too often I'm hearing that people feel limited by the physiology of their brains. They're like, my brain is broken. My brain's just different. I have this because and as somebody who has healed from a lot of addictions in my life, sometimes I get frustrated, even with the most healed people that are going through things like Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. I am constantly hearing from them like, well, my brain's just different. And it's like, yeah, now, because you fully developed an addiction, or maybe it's more prone. But I lived in that belief system for years, and it was difficult to really find motivation to move beyond what I was going through, because on some level, I wasn't sure if my brain was capable of creating a new experience for me, or at least assisting me in my new experience. And so to realize that consciousness isn't really what it seems, that my consciousness isn't limited by whatever brain I was born with, that there's the opportunity for expansion, that consciousness is its own entity outside of just what my brain is creating. That's really hopeful for a lot of situations, whether you're dealing with addictions, chronic depression, chronic anxiety, a whole host of things.
Absolutely. You said it in the most beautiful way. It's wonderful. Your question is so deep and so much right down the alley of the thinking and the understanding of why consciousness is important. And so for this, I would say that consciousness is primary, means there is an ocean of consciousness that is infinite and unbounded. And this is who we really, truly are within ourselves. Now, we can experience this consciousness or part of this consciousness based on what we have in our physiology, actually. And so there is a relationship. We cannot negate a relationship between the way the brain works, the way the brain is active, and how much of this consciousness we can experience. And we can change the brain, not only from the physical level, but also from working through our consciousness. And this is one of the most important things that actually motivated me to go into the search of technologies of consciousness and awareness. Because I realized that thoughts are primary in our life, and the mind is a field that has a lot of potential from which we can act directly. So we can actually improve our nervous system. We can improve our physiology, acting from the consciousness side. Of course, we can do it also from the physical side to some extent, or to quite some extent in some cases. Proper diet, proper daily routine, proper habits, proper food, proper balance of nutrients, and all of that helps to give us and give the body balance in its functioning. But having gone through all this psychiatry, medicine, neurology, and all of that, I found that we can do much more directly through consciousness. So my entire career was to improve life, and I thought I can do it through physical things, through drugs, medications, and all of that. And when I found Transcendental Meditation, I discovered that by simply closing the eyes and relaxing the mind, naturally it relaxes by itself during this technique. You actually awaken within yourself, and even awaken, as science is showing more and more, your DNA, so that it can change and transform your physiology in the right direction. And we have seen this, and we see it every day. There are more than 600 scientific research studies on the effects of consciousness on the actual physiology. For example, in the brain, there are many, many different areas that process or analyze different aspects of our life. And if these processors, like processors in a computer, if they work together, then you have a much greater ability to analyze things, to be clear about things, and to make the right decisions. So what we have found is when people practice transcendental meditation, the different parts of the brain start working together in a coherent way. And we have seen that reserves in the brain, what we call reserves in the brain, start awakening. And we have seen also that there is healing that happens. The body has the ability to heal itself. Because when even one damages the nervous system and all that, not all the damage is happening on all levels, because the DNA, for example, which is in our cells, is still present. However, some of it has been repressed, some of it has been activated, and you get, whatever expression of the DNA on the nervous system. Now, from consciousness, you can actually start healing the body, start allowing it to come together, and you can get actually the DNA to produce the right proteins, the right transmitters, the right necessary ingredients and enzymes that will actually help heal the body. That is why when people practice these mental techniques, they have a younger physiological age, they have more performance, greater and faster reaction time, they are more balanced, and they even get rid of difficulties or complications in health. And, I'm not saying that we shouldn't use medicine. Of course, it is very necessary. But as you say, we can do all of this from the level of consciousness, improve the physiology itself, and our ability to experience higher levels of consciousness rises at the same time. So consciousness is not just something theoretical or abstract. It's very real. This is what we are. And the way we think influences our body. You walk on the street and you see a snake, maybe. You think it's a snake. It's dark and like that. So that interpretation of what you have seen leads to increased heart rate, maybe blood pressure, there is fear, certain secretions of hormones, cortisol, stress program happen. And all of this damages the body and puts pressure on it. But suppose this snake was not really a snake, was a rope. So it's your interpretation of what you have seen on the level of your consciousness, because you haven't looked carefully, you haven't examined with a peaceful mind. Maybe you were stressed and tired, so your vision was narrow and you had fears. And so you see something which actually is not even there. And that interpretation on the level of awareness, on the level of consciousness, leads to a chain of reaction in the body that can be very damaging. So we know that consciousness has a powerful effect on healing or on damaging the physiology. And so there is these technologies of improving one's awareness, improving one's consciousness, so that we can see clearly and on a peaceful level, harmonize our physiology and heal ourselves. So it works both ways.
I'm thinking about how I have this Aura ring, and it actually tests my vitals, and a lot of people out there probably know what it is. Well, I've been meditating daily for years now. I did Transcendental Meditation. I was trained in that when I was pregnant with my first, and I've just been an avid meditator ever since, and kind of before, but that really solidified my practice. And this Aura ring is constantly releasing new features like stress tests, heart health, and the most recent one is heart health. And I was comparing with my cousins who also have one, and their heart is a year older than they are, and mine is 11 years younger than I am. And so as you're talking, I'm like, I did attribute that I've been doing cardio for most of my life, but I wonder how much meditation has helped that, because I will tell you that I would think, having 2 toddlers at home, that my heart would be a little bit stressed out. So I was glad to see that it's actually pretty relaxed.
That's wonderful. This experience that you have, we have, charted it from a scientific perspective by taking controls and large number of people. And that's why we have seen that those who practice transcendental meditation have a younger biological age than their chronological age. So they might be maybe 40 or 50, and then for those who are 40, they'll maybe measure as 30 or 35 or less than that. In your case, it was 11 years. It's wonderful. And this is real. This is really real. And all of this is in spite of facing demand from the outside. But as you go back morning and evening, twice a day, and you release those stresses and strains and reboot your system. It's like a computer that's been working nonstop with so many softwares running. You need to reboot it. You need to let it go back to its original design. And that's what transcending does. That's what the experience from the level of consciousness does. You close the eyes. It's a mental technique. You don't have to do anything physical. And you settle down and go back to yourself. And naturally, nature takes care of reorganizing itself because you are going back to your original design, which is a healthy design, and awakening even in your system, whatever mechanisms of healing, of clearing, of removing tensions and stresses, the body heals itself. If you hurt yourself or you cut yourself, and give yourself a chance, the body, sends mechanisms of cells and like that, and healing mechanisms, and it heals itself. So even on the mental level, we have that healing mechanism that is present within us. What we need to do is give ourselves the chance, give our body the chance to heal itself. And so that's why we rest, that's why we sleep. And transcendental meditation gives a very, very profound, deep rest, and a quality of rest that is at the same time wakeful. So that's why we call it restful alertness. And that has a very great healing power on the physiology.
I want to shift to an aspect of life that this sort of opens up another thread of discussion. There's been a debate for centuries, free will versus determinism. And this is something that you cover in your book. But materialists believe that there's sort of a deterministic view of the universe where all actions are the results of physical processes. There's been certain studies that suggest that our sense of free will is an illusion, even though I know there's some inconsistencies. What does this new understanding of consciousness add to this discussion? What does this new understanding of consciousness add to this discussion?
There is a reason why in the book and the discussion about consciousness, I say that freedom is a necessity for manifestation. So I go as far as this, which means without freedom, there would be no manifestation. Now, this is a big statement that has to be supported by logic. The logic is systematic and follows from the original paradigm that consciousness is primary. And it comes from really the big question about life of why there is something rather than nothing. If consciousness is not a material entity, and it's there as an ocean of being, as a field, why would it manifest? Why would something appear? Why would there be any creation or manifestation of anything? And so the logic goes in the book that since it is consciousness, it is conscious. It must have a quality. What is its nature? Its nature is to be conscious. And to be conscious in all possible ways. So it kind of reflects in itself. So we're calling it consciousness simply because it is able to be conscious. Now, it's conscious in an infinite number of ways. But these ways of being conscious are virtual in its reality, because it's like imagination. So I usually take the example of an author who wants to create a fiction book. So you can imagine anything. He can imagine, or she can imagine, they can imagine anything they want. And they can imagine things that don't really even exist on the regular life. You know, imagine a unicorn, can imagine a person living for 1,000 years. And so this is the field of imagination. And so consciousness has the ability to imagine, like we human can imagine. Let's imagine this consciousness that is reflecting on itself in an infinite number of ways. And therefore, it conceives an infinite number of possibilities. But these possibilities do not exist yet at this stage of our discussion as real entities. They are only imaginations. And this consciousness, once, or it's by its nature, is to be conscious in all possible ways. So there are some ways in which it is not conscious at this stage of consideration. And these ways include limited perspectives. So I'm trying to say in a few words something that requires quite a bit of explanation, which is really taken in a stepwise fashion in the book, and much easier to understand than just what we are presenting. But to answer the question about freedom, one has to know the background of ultimate reality, which is this consciousness experiencing itself from different perspectives and realizing spontaneously that there are some perspectives that cannot be experienced except if they are lived at their own level. So imagination is something. The author imagines what it is like to be a hero or somebody of a certain character, to be a judge, to be a lawyer, whatever. But they cannot really experience that until they put themselves in the shoes of that entity which they are imagining, which means they have to forget themselves and take the role, fully adapt the role of that entity. So to say it again, maybe in a different way, let's take an example of an actor. An actor who wants to embody a certain role. You want to be maybe a thief, or you want to be better, let's choose something positive. You want to be a lover who is fully in love with somebody and want to convince those who are watching you playing that role that your role is real. One of the ways you can do it is forget who you are, forget your own life, forget your problems, forget your difficulties, and embody that role 100%. And so, in a sense, that's what we're calling put yourself in the shoes of this big romantic lover. And forget who you are, what problems you have at home, or what difficulties you have. Forget everything else. And be that inspired, romantic, big lover. And when you actually put yourself in that role fully and forget who you are, you then are able to experience the reality of that fiction person, but it's now real because it's you playing that role. And I know from many actors that I have talked to and that I have, shared with discussions and thoughts, that sometimes they actually really forget who they are during the role and live that role 100%. And even when the role ends, when their acting ends, it takes them a little bit of time to go back to where they have been before, to their own life and like that. So those who play, for example, the roles of heavy alcoholics or depressed people, they kind of get a little bit of that, and it takes them time to get over it and clean it up from their system, which means they truly forget who they are. Now, this is a metaphor, an analogy to this infinite consciousness who wants to experience from all these different perspectives. And therefore, it has to put itself in all these roles. The role of a cat, what it is like to be a cat, what it is like to be Melissa, what it is like to be Tony, what it is like to be, a president of a country or a prime minister or a athlete or something, what it is like to be, what it is like to be. So what it has to do in order to really know that character is to forget itself and put itself in the character. So it keeps its consciousness, of course, but it forgets and hides its infinite, unbounded consciousness and starts seeing from those limited perspectives, playing roles. So it's playing roles, playing the role of a great podcaster like Melissa, playing the role of a physician, playing the role of that, of this, of the tree, playing all these roles and forgetting these other values. This is how manifestation actually happens. So we're covering two sides at the same time. Now, in order to play those roles properly, those roles have to have their full identity, and they cannot be connected to everything else on the surface level. On the surface level of their life, of their expression, they have to be an independent entity. And to be an independent entity, they have to have the ability, the freedom, to act from the perspective of this independent entity. So freedom, therefore, is a necessity in order to be able to experience from a limited perspective. And so freedom is a necessity for manifestation. It's a necessity for life. And freedom is on different scales and levels. There are different degrees of freedom. The higher consciousness, the more freedom. The lower consciousness, the less freedom. So when you say there is a particle even has certain degrees of freedom. Even from physics, we know there is a certain degrees of uncertainty. So at the beginning, scientists were saying the laws are so rigid and everything has to follow, and I can know what will happen at every moment if I know what is the previous moment and all the conditions, because there is law and order in the universe. But now we know that there are actually certain degrees of freedom where there is unexpected things can happen on a even molecular level, on the cellular level, on the elementary particle level, and therefore there is a certain uncertainty. There is an uncertainty in the field of actually manifestation that allows us to see that freedom is possible, freedom is actually real, and according to this paradigm, freedom is a necessity for manifestation. So that is the philosophical part a little bit. Now let me bring us back to just directly answering the question. We have freedom to choose within constraints. The constraints are due to our previous actions and our previous decisions. So we have been doing things that create a certain set of conditions that will actually limit our freedom. They can limit our freedom. There is no question about that. But we still have freedom to change those conditions, and we still have freedom to make decisions based on what we are able to do today and now. Now, we have freedom to choose our action within constraints, of course. But we don't have freedom to choose the result of our action. The results of our action is absolutely deterministic, determined by laws determined by circumstances, determined by our previous actions, and determined by the conditions that are present in the universe at that time or in our environment, not to go too far into the universe. So when you plant an apple seed and you nurture it and you allow it to grow, it is going to give you an apple tree. It's not going to give you a mango or a banana. That is deterministic. Yet you could have planted a mango seed and gotten a mango tree, and there, most likely, you have freedom. You have freedom to do that. You have choice. You have the ability to choose what you plant, but you don't have ability to sow except what you have, or you don't have ability to reap except what you have sown. Now, that is deterministic, at the same time has freedom. So the results of action are always deterministic. The ability to choose is there with some constraints. Now, you can also change the future. I used to take the example, I can say that, okay, you planted an apple seed, and 10 years later you come and you don't want apples, you want to eat bananas, or you want to eat mango. And you find yourself in front of your apple tree, and that's what you have in your garden. And you say, well, I can't eat except apples, but I'm sad. I have done this. I should have done something else. I don't know why it happened. Whatever. You ask yourself these questions. If your consciousness is narrow, you are stuck there and you find yourself unable to eat except apples. But if your consciousness is broader, you start saying, well, it doesn't matter. There are people who like apples, and they might have mangoes, or they might buy my apple, and with my money, and I can go and buy mango. So that is really the difference between having narrow perception, somebody who doesn't know that the market exists, doesn't know, that is, an exaggeration in this case, but it is for real. It's a metaphor that is significant. If they don't know that there are also other possibilities, that means their consciousness is narrow. If they know you can, sell the apples, or there is a market nearby, that means your consciousness is broader. You know that there is a market. You know that in the market there are mangoes, or if there is apples, for those who want them, take the money and order some mangoes from somewhere else. These are all different possibilities that are available when your consciousness is expanded. So you can change things, even what seems to be fully determined, you can actually change it if you have broader consciousness, and you can overcome your difficulties. Now, we're talking about apples and mangoes, but this also has to do with our life, our hopes, decisions that we have made before that are weighing on us. We can change our destiny. If we improve our consciousness, we can be masters of our destiny. And that is really the important message that this paradigm of consciousness that I present in the book brings, is that we can be truly masters of our destiny if we improve our consciousness.
You know what I am reminded of, and how I think of it now is, there's millennials out there who probably remember when we grew up playing Super Mario Brothers, like 2 and 3, and we're just going from left to right. Yes, we could jump up and down, but then all of a sudden, Sega Genesis was released, and we could go backwards and forwards and up and down and through. And it was actually really difficult to learn how to control the little men with the controllers because there were too many options. And I experienced something similar when I started to be able to access depths of my consciousness and understand the nature of reality. I feel like so many people are living in that 2D realm of their life where they're just moving from past to future in this linear way. And when you start to realize, my belief system is that all options exist, all possibilities exist, and it's all happening at once. And my actions determine which level of that I'm able to experience. And so 21-year-old me was living in a downward spiral with these addictions. There were very limited options for me. And when I started to access, okay, what can I do to change my belief system, to change how I see myself, my identity, what I believe to be possible, and I started showing myself new things, I was able to access different versions of my life that weren't available to 21-year-old Melissa. And now I truly believe that any option is possible. And when I have a natural charm in my thoughts, there's something appealing, I know there's something in that for me. And I know that it's my job to change my reality so that that becomes even more possible. And that looks like finding people who have done that, watching Gaia TV instead of Netflix, listening to motivational talks in the mornings, meditating over and over again. So I actually get to experience myself in a new way. And when I devote myself to this new version of reality, it's like the path begins to show itself.
This is so beautifully said, Melissa. This is really wonderful. That's actually my message in a more elaborate way. Of course, it's a book, but it's really that we are a field of all possibilities, and all possibilities can be tapped into. We have it's all within us. We have a reservoir within us of infinite creativity and intelligence. And nature, life offered this to us, as you beautifully expressed, in so many real ways that we have actually to be able to hear, to listen. So those who have their eyes open, they will see. Those who have their ears open, they will hear, and they will know the infinite possibilities available in life. And then they can make it happen because that is what awareness is. That's what consciousness is. When we say open your eyes and see, it means just have your awareness there. Don't be stuck or seeing only very short term or only narrow vision. See more, see life in its true fullness. And life is a field of all possibilities. And we can always tap into the highest possibility if we can see it.
Well, I love leaving listeners with some sort of grounded action or one thought to really focus on this week and bring all of what we've learned and discussed today into the reality. If you were going to leave them with one piece of growth work, if you will, whether it's something to do or something to dwell on, what would that be?
Know that within yourself, you have an infinite reservoir of creativity and potential. It is hidden by preconceived ideas or by things you have been told when you were young, or experiences where you have maybe not succeeded or succeeded less than what you expected. And you have given yourself that impression about yourself of limitations, of narrowness. There is within you the infinite potential of life that you can tap into, and you can really fulfill your dreams and live the maximum potential, flourishing and thriving in a beautiful way. This is our birthright as humans, to live the full potential of life. And we can do it. We can do it. There are techniques, there are ways to do it. It's not something just philosophical or ideas that are just wishful thinking. It is for real. That's why we call them techniques and methods and ways to actually help ourselves and be the best we can, which can be ultimately better than anything that we have ever imagined possible. So let's go into that with great inspiration and hope. Life is full, and it is really the birthright of everyone to live that fullness.
Well, thank you so much for this discussion. Your book is called Consciousness is All There Is by Dr. Tony Nader. Where is the best place for listeners to connect with you?
I have a website. It's called drtonynader.com. The book is available on drnaderbooks.com, but also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the different outlets that are there. It will be released on August 6th and will be available on all platforms. If you want to learn Transcendental Meditation, there is a site called tm.org. We have also David Lynch Foundation that teaches TM under different circumstances in different areas. And so welcome you to learn, experience, and grow in fullness.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/368. Your challenge for this week is to just play with the idea that maybe there's more to you, your reality, your beliefs than you give life credit for, or you give yourself credit for, I should say. We think we've got this finite amount of energy, and I know this is a really hard paradigm to get around. But I honestly believe, and who cares what I believe, all the great masters of the history of spirituality and consciousness have taught that we have access to infinite wisdom, intelligence, energy, creativity. It's all around us. We are not separate. Our illusion of ego makes us believe that we are separate. It's basically our collection of beliefs and ideas about ourselves and the world that keep us safe. But if we were to transcend that, and even for a moment merge with that oneness, we would have access to so much more power than what's confined within our egos. So just play with that idea. I like to have the thought and go deep into meditation and see what arises. And let me know how it goes. Reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. You can find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.